Now, for more on China's economy and the state of the Chinese economy, let's turn to some experts in Singapore. We have Jim Rogers, a world-renowned investor and author. And also in Beijing, we have Li Yong. He's the senior fellow at China Association of International Trade. Welcome, gentlemen. Jim, if I may, let me go to you first. China's GDP expanded 8.1%, according to official data, to $18 trillion in 2021. But the growth has slowed, apparently, quarter by quarter. If you look at the figure, the fourth quarter GDP slowed to just 4%. Do these figures give you more hope or more causes of concern about Chinese economy?
Well, the whole world has got to start worrying coming up because, you know, we've had a 12-year expansion, which is the longest in American history anyway. So for many reasons, we may be coming to an end. We have inflation coming. Interest rates will be going higher. So we've had a great run, but nothing lasts forever. So we all have to worry, including China.
What specific things are you worried about the Chinese economy and the prospect of the Chinese economy?
Well, China is the largest trading country in the world now, and if your customers have problems, you have problems. Even if China does everything right and their customers run into problems, if Japan or America or Europe or other countries, and they are, then of course it's going to have an effect on China.
Well, Mr. Li, let me go to you. What's your reading of China's GDP figure or figures for the year 2021?
I think that is a significant achievement made by China during the pandemic, especially when the economy is being seriously affected globally, and China is able to achieve it because of the effective control of the pandemic and restoration of the supply. And China, with that, China is able to substitute some of the supply countries, to supply the goods from China. So that is one of the drivers. I think the other drivers of the economic growth is the China's policies, for example, to encourage the manufacturers to produce and to support those companies that have been adversely affected, to come back to production. And of course, there are other factors, for example, the continued effort to reform and opening up and the coordination between the central policymakers as well as the local government policymakers. And all those efforts, I think, all in all, contributed to the successful achievement of that goal. And I just want to emphasize that not just the GDP goal, other major targets have also been met,
right?
Such as employment, CPI, and so on and so forth.
Right. There's a whole lot to digest, obviously. Jim, we've heard from the Chinese president during a special virtual meeting at the World Economic Forum, and once again, the Chinese president championed globalization, like he did many times over at the forum. If you remember 2017, when he compared globalization opening up to, not opening up to locking oneself up in the closet. What's your takeaway from the Chinese president's message this time around?
Well, I was delighted to hear him use the words opening up and cooperation several times. It's very good for China and for the world if it's happening. One reason that China has done better is because you have been opening up the new frontiers, one belt, one road, massive amounts of operations and opening in Africa. China's taking advantage of opening up and with one belt, one road, and the new frontiers and the new opening, and that's one reason China has done relatively better than the rest of us.
Right, but we have a problem, obviously. We have many problems, and Omicron, the COVID, is one of them. It is disrupting supply chains, trade, making difficulties for governments to decide if they want to reopen economies. How do you see countries, weathering this storm of COVID?
The world has had epidemics throughout history. Somehow or another we have survived. You know, this time maybe we reacted more, better or worse, I don't know. Never before did we close McDonald's when we had a virus, but there was lots of closing, and so far the world has weathered it, and it seems that the world is going to be better off next year than last year, at least as far as the virus is concerned, and that will help all of us.
Well, Mr. Li, what messages did you pick up from the Chinese president's speech last night?
You know, I just want to make a special note that, you know, the Chinese President Xi Jinping's speech in Chinese is just about a little more than 4,000 words. And if you look at the English text, it is 17,000 words.
Wow.
Which means, you know, you see the difference, you know, in Chinese.
Chinese is
you know,
a more
kind
succinct language, arguably.
But anyway, I think, you know, there's a lot of information being embedded in Xi Jinping's message. One is, I think the world need to take, you know, joint effort to deal with the situation, the pandemic, the risk of potential crisis, and the innovation and development issues and so on and so forth. I think that is very important. And the other thing is, I think we need to really read and understand is the three commitments that China has made. For example, high quality development, determination to commit to green development and so on and so forth. So those are positive messages from China, and also there's a call from China that the world should work together.
Right. Jim, let me turn to you. The Chinese president, along with many world leaders, including the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, talk about this global north-south divide, the divide and division between the developing countries and developed countries. Guterres explicitly said that the developed countries failed to help the developing countries in their hour of need. What do you make of all this?
Well, it's pretty simple. It's factually correct. I mean, look out the window. We all know that. Certainly, as I said before, China has been opening new frontiers and new markets and cooperating probably a lot more. I'm an American, so I don't like to say it, but better than the United States and better than European countries, and they are reaping the benefits. No, America is, I don't like saying it, the last president in America closed off more, and this president is closing off more. That has never been good for anybody and not good for the world.
And, you know, just out of curiosity, what should the current president of the United States policy, you know, going forward vis-a-vis China? Because it looks like that Biden inherited much of Trump's, you know, policies, be it national security, sanctions, trade, tariffs, so on and so forth. Jim.
These guys, listen, I cannot defend the American president, last one or this one. Neither one of them seems to understand what is happening in China or happening in Asia, and how that if we all work together, we can all be much, much more prosperous. I mean, China and America, you know, after like 1980 for several decades, we made a lot of progress together and a lot of prosperity together. They don't seem to understand that anymore, and it worries me.
Do you think people like Joe Biden don't understand this, or they don't have the political space to do that?
I don't see any difference. They don't, even if they understand, which I don't think they do, the mood in the United States, especially in the last 5 years, whenever things start going wrong in a country, they blame foreigners, and Mr. Trump blamed everything on foreigners. He even blamed the Canadians and the Germans. He blamed everybody. So that mood has set in. It is not good for the United States. It's not good for anybody. And that mood, I hope that Biden would start changing that mood and say, wait, let's get together, let's cooperate. You know, the leader of China said, as I said, he used the word cooperate several times. He used the word opening up several times. I wish somebody would tell Washington, D.C.
Mr. Li, what do you think?
Because they're not.
You know, I think, you know, we are facing a kind of a very interesting situation that is, I think, complicating the global picture economically, politically, and you can see small cliques, small groups being formed against, on a kind of an ideological basis against China. And there are also some other policies that are, trying to cut off the relationship, which is called the decoupling. And all those are kind of worrying because, in this world of integration, any effort to divide the world or to decouple, is to be disastrous for sure. And I think people need to be aware of this, and that's why President Xi Jinping has been advocating solidarity and work together.
Also in his speech, President Xi called for major developed countries to adopt quote-unquote responsible economic policies, manage policy spillovers, and avoid severe impacts on developing countries. So, Mr. Li Yong, what specific policies do you think the Chinese president might be referring to? What would be these, responsible economic policies?
Yeah, I think basically we are talking about the economic policies or financial policies being staged by, by most of the developing countries. I think, for example, the quantitative easing. We are actually looking right now the consequences of the quantitative easing, and then the exit strategies. And some of the countries, are trying to exit the quantitative easing abruptly. So President Xi Jinping advocated that companies should, be careful in making their own economic policies or financial policies, physical or monetary, because all those policies are going to have a global impact, and particularly developing countries are most likely caught short in terms of their response to for example, the turbulences. One notable problem we are facing is the global inflation, which is now in its 10-year high of 4.3%. If you look at the United States, the December number, is 7%, the highest in last 40 years. So those, I think, are the symptoms of the potential risks we are facing, and we need to work together. We need to work, for example, under international organization framework, and to really to consult each other and to come up with an appropriate solution to manage the potential risks and disruptions and problems coming out of the economic policies being made or being considered to make in the developed worlds, in particular.
Right. Jim, how do you look at the Chinese president's call for major developed countries to act responsibly when it comes to implementing their macroeconomic policies?
For goodness sake, I hope somebody listens. The United States, Japan, a few other countries have built up gigantic debts. No country has ever been as deeply in debt as the United States is now. And look at Japan. Japan goes deeper. All these countries are building staggering amounts of debt. Now, somebody's going to have to pay for this. It is good to be old in 2022, because my kids, for instance, are going to have problems in the future with all of this staggering amount of debt which has been built up and all of the staggering amount of money which has been printed. It is leading to inflation. History is very clear. Inflation is going to get worse as long as they do this. And somebody needs to sit down with these guys in Washington or Tokyo, etc., and explain to them, this cannot continue. This is going to lead to serious, serious problems unless somebody does something. I mean, China printed some money, but nothing like Japan or America. China spent some money, but nothing like what we spend in the United States. Somebody's got to teach basic economics and basic history.
Yeah, last time I checked, the U.S. debt stands at over $25 trillion. That is about the size of America's GDP. Now, Mr. Li Yong, President Xi also talked about the need to explore new drivers of economic growth, new models of social life. How do you think this relates to the Great Reset the World Economic Forum calls upon? And also, if I may, what kind of post-pandemic recovery, globalization do you foresee?
Yeah, I think, it's great that you mentioned about the word Great Reset, because, that has been an idea being advocated by WEF for some time. And I think it relates to the current structure of governance globally. And it also relates to the governance structure of the major economies. Because, we are actually looking at a shareholder economy. And that actually is the key fundamental driver of the imbalanced development. So FEF advocates stakeholder economy and advise companies to act responsibly in the fashion of the so-called ESG, environment, social, and governance. And also, the governments are advised not to really focus on GDP, but also, on other elements like the environment and so on. So in the future, I think, countries need to really, for example, to seek new drivers from the climate change effort.
We do need to look for new drivers, Mr. Li Yong. That's all the time we have, I'm afraid. I'm sorry to interrupt, but thank you for joining us on The Hub on CGTN, and thank you for watching. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Bye for now.